And welcome to Great Quarter Guys, episode 12, here January the 21st of 2020. And today we're going to talk about XPO and their big announcement last week about possible breaking up and kind of auctioning off different business segments. Again, my name is Kevin Hill. And this is Andrew Cox over here in his normal spot. And today we have the Director of Passport Research here at FreightWaves, JP, John Paul Hampstead. And
thanks for having me on, guys.
You bet, JP. You bet. So JP's group in Passport, they do a lot of great research that you can find in Passport, basically a new product that we have here at FreightWaves that's really research-focused and events-focused. And JP can talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But yeah, your group wrote a short research piece on, I guess it wasn't short, it was one of the longer pieces.
Yeah, it was
really
long
quickly
for us.
last week, last Thursday?
Yeah.
About XPO's announcement, and I will let you give us the backstory on it.
Yeah, well, it was more than just my group. It was a really cool team effort with the Freight Intel Research Group and Passport. Andrew was on the report as well, and Seth Holm. But basically, it was a reaction to XPO CEO Brad Jacobs' announcement that they were going to do some strategic divestment of some of the business lines and basically try to make sure that the business was being properly valued by the public markets. And so we kind of, we created a timeline of all of the different acquisitions that XPO had done. I think 17 in about 4 years, something like that. 41 months.
Yeah, 41 months.
17 acquisitions, and everything from.
And most of those started out as small brokerages.
Yeah.
Basically $20-30 million of gross revenues a year. And I think they started off XPO whenever he bought the original XPO had about $150 million in gross revenue, and he started rolling up small freight brokerages in the beginning. So a lot of those early acquisitions were, anywhere up to I think the largest, in the early days maybe $100 million of gross revenue, and they kind of staircased up.
Yeah, and eventually they started diversifying into different service offerings. So they got into, international freight forwarding. They got into intermodal. They got into
Final mile. That's right. They got it, and then of course, with the Conway acquisition, they became one of the major LTL carriers in the country that had assets at that point.
Yeah, and so,
which was a double-edged sword.
And that is actually one of the most interesting parts about this about face on the part of Jacobs and his management team is that originally what they told investors was that they were going to roll up the non-asset logistics space, which of course commanded higher multiples than trucking companies. Were considered to be slightly more defensively positioned because they could take advantage of downturns in the freight cycles by exploiting the spread between contract and spot prices, things like that. But he ends up buying Conway, and now is talking about potentially divesting everything except North American LTL. Wants to become a pure play LTL carrier. So it's a really fascinating story about how a strategy is kind of shifting in response to the market's reception.
Yeah, so it is very interesting, right? He's going to keep the LTL business. That's the one thing that's not for sale. Everything else is for sale. And this came at the end of the markets on last Wednesday afternoon, where he went on Jim Cramer, did a press release, went on Jim Cramer. And at that point, the stock had been kind of beaten down earlier this year. More than kind of beaten down. It was really beaten down. It was down in the 40s. They had a huge acquisition that was in play earlier, in very early 2019 that was supposed to, the rumor was it was supposed to have doubled the size of XPO. And that got squashed with a short seller report. And the short seller report had them going to zero, kind of like a Herbalife-esque type
was
of.
not a good report.
It was a horrible report. So they were beaten down.
In the sense of low quality, it was not a.
Yeah, no,
it was a low quality short.
It was kind of very not any evidence. It was more of a of almost slanderous.
Yeah.
A little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so they had a lot of accusations without any evidence backed up. So they're in the 40s. They've climbed all summer long from 40 to about 80. Then we have Wednesday afternoon, where they went up 20% after market.
Yeah.
So basically, once he was on Jim Cramer, the press release came out. The breakup was in play, 20%, and they're still in the 90s. So the stock's still in the 90s right now. And tell us about the valuation that Passport and Seth Holm put on XPO stock with this news.
Yeah, so what we did was we kind of looked at, especially what Seth did, I should say, is he looked at all of the different constituent businesses in XPO and then looked at how peer or comparable companies were valued by the market.
And so we have LTL.
Yep.
We have freight brokerage or 3PL.
Yep.
And then we have Asia, an Asian business of contract logistics.
I think so. And also
European contract
as well.
logistics as well. So those are the four primary business entities or business segments within XPO, right?
And then then there's different ways of looking at it, but essentially, if they can get the value for those businesses,
so some of the parts, right?
Right, some of the parts. So Seth said that the company should be worth $124 a share. And I think, we got some notes earlier this week, basically from different, research analysts, and that seems to be kind of in the ballpark of what a lot of people are thinking. I think Deutsche Bank said that XPO could be worth $125 a share, so basically the same thing. So it's pretty interesting. It was great work by Seth, and I think it really anticipated. He actually got ahead of where a lot of the analysts were, and they ended up kind of raising their targets to catch up. So that was really cool. The other kind of thing we looked at were okay, our operating assumption in this research report is that Brad Jacobs views his main value add to a company as the CEO as his expertise in doing deals. So we assume that he is, spinning off parts of XPO in order to get back to a position where he can do accretive deals that make financial sense. And so we kind of looked at what would be some suitable targets for
So Brad Jacobs says deals.
Yeah.
Are you saying that he does deals?
yeah. In case you didn't know, he's really good at doing deals like.
Well, he rolled up the heavy equipment rental industry.
Right. United Rental.
And then I forget the name of the waste management or the waste business company that he rolled up that space and sold it to Waste Management. Before he jumped into freight brokerage and rolled up that industry into, I think the market cap as of today is about $8.65 billion. Enterprise value of just short of $16 billion. So from $150 million gross revenue brokerage to a company with a market cap of just over $8.5 billion in 7 years?
Yeah.
So this he kind of does M&A.
A little bit.
Kind of buys out. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
Well, Kramer kind of prodded Jacobs on the show to kind of force the question that he thinks there's been a bigger player out there that has offered him something for the entire company, and that has given them some confidence to know that there's going to be healthy buyers in the market, and that's why he kind of feels confident in his decision to auction off these parts. He was very confident to say that yes, he thinks there'll be healthy buyers, but he was also he didn't say that Amazon had offered him money, but. That's kind of the rumor going out that Amazon had made an offer for the whole thing.
I think this guy next to us, I don't know if you wrote that article on FreightWaves last year or maybe the year before. The years are getting away from me these days, but was it Home Depot should buy XPO?
Yeah.
Am I remembering correctly?
There was a rumor that spiked XPO's stock price 10% a day a couple years back. when there were rumors that Home Depot would buy it. Yeah, I wrote that article. It would be so ironic though if Amazon, who pulled all of the postal injection business from XPO at the end of 2018,
$600 million worth.
would, if they could be ultimately responsible for pumping the stock price back up by making knives with Brad Jacobs and buying all these businesses from that. I don't know if that would happen, but I find that hilarious and kind of fascinating.
Yeah, hell of a story.
Yeah, and this is something that our friends over at Carry Direct were very interested in, kind of along that same theme, and they did some research for us about, and really throughout the question of, is this kind of a little bit of an arms race with big retailers who are taking control of their transportation, like Amazon is doing and might be doing, maybe with bidding on XPO, or maybe there's some other bidders out there that there could be a bidding war. Maybe, should we say Walmart could get into the mix, Target, who knows? I mean,
I think Walmart is sort of the original retailer that did insource its transportation, right? So they largely do control about 90% of their transportation needs are in-house.
True, on the wholesale side, right? So basically going from vendors to full truckload, vendors to DCs, back to DCs, but on the front end, on really the e-commerce side, the last mile, maybe the LTL side, that they really are still, I think, in the first few innings.
Interesting. Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. Also, we've heard that there could be private equity buyers who are interested in taking some of these businesses, and
I think the freight brokerage side.
That's right.
Is a private equity play, right? Because private equity is really heavy into the 3PL freight brokerage industry, as we saw. It was a Nolan Transportation Group bought Eagle Transportation in Hattiesburg, Mississippi this week, and you just see private equity deals after private equity deals.
That was a pretty big deal, I imagine. I mean,
it's going to put them over $1 billion probably, or just right at the edge of a $1 billion brokerage now for Nolan Transportation.
Right, and you think about other roll-ups like Global Trans, which is like a huge conglomerate of,
and they just did a deal this week, this past week, right?
Yeah,
in the last few days.
I didn't see the details of that, but I did see the news.
Yeah, they did. Andrew, did you remember who they bought?
Details on that one. No.
I did, and it's escaping me right now, but I know Global Trans did a deal. I don't know if it was LTL. Yeah, look it up. And again, we're live here, live streaming on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. So if you have any questions, especially on LinkedIn, we have it up right here. So you can just shoot those over to us, and we'll answer it live on air.
So Jacobs has already done a lot of the work for the private equity company. It seems like if you wanted to go ahead and come in with a big deal, have a platform ready company, you've got some technology, you've got some integration and a lot of experienced executives. If that's what you're looking for, and you want a platform for additional bolt-ons, it makes sense. And as far as last mile, I think M&A and tech is still really strong in that sector. So yeah, I think it's going to be really. I don't think that he would have announced all of this. He doesn't want to disappoint. He doesn't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So I do think that we're going to see some of these deals close.
I think this is going to close.
This is going to be a story that just keeps on giving for, I would estimate, the next year at least, right?
We always do an over and under at the end of the episode, but let's throw out this not over and under, long short. We would do a long short, and we'll do that later in the episode. But right here's a long short. Does this breakup happen or it doesn't? Are you long short it?
Long.
I'm very long, yeah.
I
am very long, too.
He's got a history of making acquisitions. I think he understands deal making. He'll make this happen. And I'd even be long that they make an acquisition in 2020 after they get some of these spinoffs going.
I would be long on that, too. I would.
I mean, because think about how much money, how much cash they can create with the sale of these. Once you break up a lot of these businesses, you're going to get a higher multiple on the markets than you do as the company as a whole. So if they sell a couple of these off, they can easily raise, upwards of $10 billion. They can pay down all their cash and still have pay down all their debt and still have cash to spend at the end of the year. So
yeah, so basically, let's jump into the multiples, because I don't think we've talked really about the multiples. You take Old Dominion, the gold standard of LTL. They trade at 18 times is EBITDA.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So 18 times the EBITDA. XPO's been trading at 8 to 9 times EBITDA. Yeah. And it's basically at such a low EBITDA multiple that, especially in the 50s and 60s, when their stock was hanging out there, it valued the logistics business, or the North American freight brokerage at zero.
Right.
Which was just a complete and utter undervaluation. So they're breaking this up to become a pure play LTL to go after the multiple of Old Dominion, or maybe close to it. So if they can go from 8, 9 to a 13, 14, 15, they're going to double the value of the LTL. And as we said, they're going to have cash to start rolling up again.
Yeah, they'll have a lot of cash, and that's really what it will take to compete with Old Dominion. I know that we've covered them on a business model breakdown on this program before, but they really depend on having a great. It's kind of like the snowball or a flywheel, right? It's like you have a very dense network with great service, which means you can charge more, which means you're throwing off more cash, which means you can invest twice as much in capital expenditures as your peers, which means that you always have more facilities and more trailers, which means you get better service, which means you charge. So it snowballs like that. And I think if XPO can slim itself down and have a lot of cash to throw into more facilities and more trailers, get that tractor to trailer ratio up where they really get some fluidity. I think that's what they're going to. I mean, if you're looking at the only 100 bagger I can think of, in transportation recently is Old Dominion. Right. So,
yes. So if you take Passport Research, the research report that you did last week, and we crawl into basically the multiples and the breakup and the valuation. Right. We go back to the valuation. The 3 other business segments, what number did we put on that roughly?
I've got it right here. So LTL base of 11, North American transportation minus the LTL with a 12 multiple, base multiple. Logistics, I guess that's the European logistics at a. I'm sorry, that's not.
Do we have a dollar valuation?
Yeah, we do. We've got an enterprise value currently with all those at 18. And then market, and this could, if they end up selling some of these off, get to a market cap of near 14, currently sitting at almost double.
So if they sold off the other 3 segments, that would give them how much in cash? Did we do that?
We didn't do an
like
exact
around
number,
10
but
billion,
it should
right?
be somewhere near 10 billion. Yeah.
Right. So we can agree on that. It's about 10 billion. So, and they have about 4.5 billion in long-term debt.
Correct.
So let's assume that they just pay off the debt. The debt-free.
$5.5 billion in cash.
$5.5 billion in cash. What's the next move?
There's a lot of.
What are the LTL? What's the most interesting 2 or 3 LTL companies out there that will move the needle?
Right. So
take them from number 3, maybe to number 2 largest LTL carrier in North America.
Okay, well, there's 2 that are very interesting, which are, I think, special cases. One is FedEx Freight and one is Saia. But other than that, you're looking at Averitt, you're looking at Southeastern. Who else is on the list?
Central Freight Lines, excuse me. Exact Transport, Carolina Logistics, all pretty much regional players, and Southwestern Motor Transport. These are smaller guys. But yeah, I think Saia makes a little bit of sense. They've got 5,000 trucks. They have plenty of cash to buy them once they spin some of these entities off, but that would be a big move. I mean, that would.
It would. Do you think that it would require too much of a premium to make sense? Because it's like the youngest, fastest growing LTL LTL company out there.
It's hard I think it's a little too early to sell Saia. Like if I owned Saia, I don't know if I would want to sell it right now.
So you have all these big players, and then I think we identified at least 500 or 600 smaller, maybe 20, 30, 100 truck, really regional focused niche business LTL companies out there that fly under the radar. So do we start seeing like that small roll up a little bit?
Yeah, you might see
that
just
plenty of cash to go out and make $20-30 million acquisitions.
as they did
so
in
it's
the early
almost
days.
yeah,
They
it's almost
repeat,
that they
repeat
can,
the same, and then step size their way up to
I
a big
kind of
deal.
think that's what they would do, just in terms of getting some wins on their belt, practicing, the difficult feat of integrating LTL carriers that have different networks, different customers, different commodities.
taking probably those legacy underperforming technology systems from the smaller regional players and upgrading them into the XPO, technology platform that is going to be far superior, probably.
And the thing about LTL that makes it so different from truckload is that it really requires much more physical infrastructure, much more like cross docks, much more consolidation and deconsolidation, scheduling of the cutting trucks at certain times and at certain volumes and things like that. And I would assume that makes it harder to integrate acquisitions. And so I think they probably need to get some practice under their belt. I wouldn't be surprised if they start off small and just kind of start snapping these things up at a pretty regular clip until they get enough stuff where they can pause, figure it out, and then maybe go after kind of an elephant-sized LTL carrier.
You made a good point about their technology, because that's something we also haven't really touched on yet, that they have industry-leading tech and brokerage and across all their platforms. So what about the idea that if they sell the assets of the companies but hold on to some of the rights of the tech and license it out, do you see them thinking about that, or and what would be the value in them doing so?
If licensing out the tech?
Yes, rather than selling the rights, rather than selling it all together.
Well, it's a recurring revenue model.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You basically you sell. It's almost like it's not really a franchise, but it has some of the qualities of franchise, right? Because you're going to have your independent business that's going to be a huge brokerage, but you're going to, instead of worrying about technology, you're just going to basically lease it from XPO.
Just to push back on that for a second, though, first of all, how hard is brokerage technology to come by right now? How the off-the-shelf software has gotten really good. Even the companies that you can pay to build your customer portals and your carrier portals and create your private load boards and automate all that stuff, it's gotten pretty easy to outsource that as well. So it's just like, I wonder, like, how.
But if you're using the XPO technology, you've already got it in place off the shelf. Why recreate it?
Yeah,
it's, right.
I just wonder, like, I could see from a buy side, a buyer, like, okay, whatever. Like, XPO is one of the 5 different things I can buy, but like, in terms of like differentiating XPO, like, basically, like, is their technology for how much longer is it going to be industry leading, and it's a very competitive, crowded space. I just wonder, like, how much difference that really would
you bring up a good point, because how aggressively they're going to update their brokerage technology if they don't have the brokerage anymore.
Correct. In a very VC equipped industry that's coming in, money's piling in.
Right.
It's been slowing down, but over the past few years, money's been flowing into digitization and tech and the brokerage space.
Well, let's circle back to the Carrier Direct's kind of question and research angle this week, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Big retailers, are they looking to control more of their transportation? Is this going to be a little bit of an arms race going forward?
Well, I think everybody's seen Amazon, and though Amazon, maybe if we talked about them last week, that they've maybe have taken a couple steps back, that they've kind of almost overcommitted and underproduced on their logistics of the last few quarters. I think that they've put pressure on everyone else to take control of their transportation.
Well, let's do this scenario. Let's say Amazon does buy, let's say the brokerage, and maybe all 3 units except for the LTL part, right? Amazon buys it. How does everyone else react to that?
I think it goes in one of 2 ways. Either you go like the managed transportation route and you partner with a very large, sophisticated provider that can really solve a lot of problems for you, to work closely with you and go and consult with your suppliers upstream and stuff like that. or you start insourcing your transportation yourself and just building out those capabilities. What you don't want to be stuck with in that kind of a situation is a sort of less than reliable broker that's giving loads back when things get hard.
True.
Those are the kind of people that get like squeezed out, I think, in this kind of scenario.
True. But as we go into e-commerce, right? I mean, so basically, if Amazon owns XPO's, I'm going to shift it a little bit. They're their final mile segment, which is one of the most mature final mile e-commerce kind of delivery platforms out there. What do retailers do?
Yeah, well, so we're shifting focus. Let's say
everything from
they would
Walmart
have to
to
buy
Home
all
Depot.
of XPO because their last mile division's in their LTL. So I don't think they're looking to sell their last mile.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for catching that.
But I mean, if Amazon were to, realistically, if Amazon were to own that LTL, I mean, XPO, Kramer called it one of the best pure play e-commerce plays that you can have for logistics. People have gone mad over their roll up in e-commerce. So I don't know how people would react. I think that they would initially be a little bit scared. I mean, if Amazon's not only owning 40% of the online retail industry, but they're also delivering even a higher percentage of that to other people's goods, it's pretty scary.
It is. Any thoughts on that?
It's interesting. I mean, I think as e-commerce grows and as the demand for final mile delivery services that are cheap and flexible and fast grows, what I'm kind of interested in is like the next frontier of freight brokerage. Like, when are we going to get brokers who broker like final mile capacity? Like saying like, I can have a van stop by and just like make deliveries like on this route for this week or whatever, things like that. Like, I wonder if that'll be digitized in some way. Like, there's going to be a lot of capacity. There's going to be a lot of demand. It's quite unpredictable. Then that's the whole issue with like UPS and FedEx is like you don't have, your vehicle is losing revenue. It's shedding revenue producing freight the entire route, not picking anything up. It's always an irregular route that can't be sort of like optimized each day. So I just wonder, like, how do we make that more efficient? Do intermediaries jump in there, and what does that marketplace look like?
I've never really understood. As a freight broker, I never really understood how you can make money off of e-commerce or final mile, just because anything with the shorter the distance, the less margin that's available, right? Because it's going to be a lower price. So
right.
You get from the $1,500 loads down to the $500 loads. You might make $50, and then something's going to go wrong, right? Your truck's going to get stuck picking up or delivering. They're going to want detention. You're going back to your cousin, and it's just like, I did all this for $50. Why?
Right.
So e-commerce, I've always done that, but I always brokered like heavy loads and flatbed. So it's like a foreign universe to me on that. So on the business model, I'm not really sure if brokers maybe manage transportation for PLs can get in there, but your regular freight brokerages, I just don't.
Yeah,
and it's and LTL is LTL and final mile are so difficult because there's so many different types of items that have to come in, and a lot of them need installation, like whether it be cabinets or a refrigerator or anything really.
Well, that's the fastest growing segment, right?
Yeah, it's
or
fastest growing segment,
appliances.
but it's also you have to have people, delivery people that know how to install things that aren't going to screw it up the first time and have to send somebody back out. That's not always the case because especially different appliances, they don't know how to hook them up. So
you have to have
difficult. You have to have it's a more highly skilled worker than just a delivery driver. So. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of
you have to have different skills.
A lot of impediments.
You have to have the driving, and then you have to have the mechanical background to install an oven.
Right, and then you have to take their
certified.
You have to take the old oven out. You have to have a way to dispose of it, which I don't even know how they do that.
I don't know. It's kind of a mystery to me, and finding all of those talents and being customer service focused too, because you're going into people's homes and you have to represent. It's a little bit different skill set. It's more skill sets than just strictly driving. You have to be able to do a few different things.
So one could imagine 5 years from now, when you order like a new suite of kitchen appliances from Samsung or Whirlpool or whatever, that a nice uniformed person comes in with this very polished customer experience and installs everything, takes it all away. It's very easy. It's very simple. It doesn't make you feel weird that this guy's in your house or whatever. And they actually charge for it, and they charge a decent amount of money for it. And people are willing to pay for it because of how seamless and pain-free and pleasant the experience is. I don't know, I don't think we're there yet.
Well,
but
good luck scaling that talent pool with 3.5% unemployment.
Right.
You're basically getting anyone who can come in and do, and then that goes not just for drivers or final mile people. That kind of goes all employment, right?
It's all manual labor jobs. I mean, I was talking to my dad the other day, who's in concrete construction. He's talking about paying guys who tie rebar like $25 an hour, which is a lot more than I got paid when I had to do it for him.
I know, right? I saw in the Wall Street Journal maybe last week or the week before that they're offering for manufacturing jobs. They're now offering even hourly, maybe $12-15 an hour. Manufacturing jobs, they are offering relocation expenses. $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 to relocate, and that's it kind of goes into that undersupply of labor.
We have a comment from Riley M on LinkedIn, and she asked, "Now is XPO a Canadian company?" I'm not sure where she's getting the. You guys might have an answer.
No, it's based in I think
Connecticut.
the headquarters is
Greenwich.
Greenwich, Connecticut,
Yeah.
which is
Hedge fund land, private equity land.
right. It's essentially a suburb of New York City where a lot of wealthy finance types live.
I think it's the number one or number two richest county of in America is the county that Greenwich is in. If you've ever been up there, it's a lot of pastels and basically a lot of old money or money people, Martha's Vineyard and things like that. So it's an interesting scene. Beautiful up there, though. But yeah, they're a U.S.-based company.
Yep.
So yeah.
But yeah,
Thanks, Riley, though, for the question.
Yes, thank you. So, but yeah, back to the relocation costs. I did a little bit of that on FreightWaves Now. We talked with Anthony about it. I saw the Caterpillar was offering $5,000, up to $5,000 to move 75 miles, which is just unbelievable.
I know, right?
Wow.
We had you had Raytheon, I think it was offering up to $5,000 to move for a $17 per hour factory operator job. So you can see that, and this is at a time where manufacturing and industrials are in a recession. So it's just really ill-timed for them to be having this labor talent war and having to.
I know.
bid
Imagine
up
that.
things.
You're basically we're in an industrial contraction or recession, mild recession, and you still can't find the talent you need.
Yeah, and you gotta spend thousands
That's
to get
wild.
And
them.
a lot of these places are kind of rural places too, right? So you don't have this huge talent pool to draw off of.
Right, and those companies also both have a lot of global exposure. I know CAT does a lot of sales in Asia. I know the Raytheon is essentially makes missiles for like the UK, Australia, Canada, as well as the US. But still, that is wild. I mean, imagine what it would be like if the economy was growing at 3%. Like how squeezed they would be for people right now.
I know, right? I know. So I think that wraps it up for the XPO segment. Thanks again to Carrier Direct for doing a lot of this research for us. Even though JP did a lot of it on the passport, the other questions that we kind of dug into were helped by us by our friends at Carrier Direct. So shout out to Peter and Ryan and Diane. And JP, can you give us a little bit of what Passport is?
Yeah, so Passport is the way that our most engaged audience members get access to discounted event tickets, as well as exclusive events and continuing education, seminars, and private events, as well as our great research product.
Phenomenal research products, right?
We do weekly reports on trucking markets, intermodal markets, and we do a special topic each week that comes out on Fridays. So you're talking, 150 plus reports a year that you guys get. I think the individual memberships start at $2,500. You get and along with that, so you get for the $2,500 membership, you get like 2 tickets to any of our events you want, plus all the research, plus all the continuing ed stuff. It's just a really cool way to, lean into the community, the brand and get access to all of our best stuff.
And you not only get Passport research, but you get research from the Freight Intel Group,
Right.
which is
all of
longer
our
form,
research.
white paper, kind of a lot of survey studies that we do on there. And so that's another added bonus. You get Passport, and you can find Passport research now in the Wall Street Journal.
So we discuss what our team creates content for the Wall Street Journal. We don't upload like our whole research reports. We discuss like charts and stuff like that and some of the Sonar data. In Sonar research, you can get the Passport library, and then with Passport, you'll be able to get the Sonar library. So it's not just like every couple days you get an email. It's like you immediately get access to a huge like sort of wealth of knowledge that we've been building up for a long time now.
Very good.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Okay, great.
Cool, man. Thanks.
Very cool. So let's talk about...
Yeah, let's jump into tis the season. It's earnings season.
It is the earnings season. Yeah. You want to stick around for earnings season? Yeah.
You can stick around the whole time.
I wasn't kicking you out.
No,
okay.
I was hoping.
I was like you were going to leave.
Sorry, I thought I was just here to talk about XPO, but
let's talk
keep
about
it going.
earnings.
all right, earnings. I'm always down to talk earnings.
Okay, so we covered JB Hunt last week. Kevin and I sat down for the freight update, talked a little bit about, not a great quarter for JB Hunt, but some bright spots in there, including Dedicated. Dedicated was up pretty big, up $60 million in revenues on the back of the Corey First Choice Home Delivery acquisition back in February. But it's a tough time for a broker cycle.
There was a silver lining though in the JB Hunt for freight brokerages out there is that they went from year-over-year margins of fourth quarter of 2018 about 16.9% to this year Q4 of 2019 10.6%, which is bad news for earnings. But they cited a tightness in the market that really ran up to the Christmas holidays and has continued through mid-January. And that's something we see in Sonar as well with outbound tender rejection rates. They're still elevated a little bit more than you'd see in a normal January, which is good news for all the freight brokers and trucking companies out there.
Yeah, that was the one of the big takeaways for me, and we actually wrote about that in our trucking report today. Was that I think the most notable thing about the trucking market right now is that tender rejections have stabilized at about 7.5%, which is above where they were for most of 2019. And yeah, it was confirmed in the JB Hunt call. I was reading the transcript earlier today. Shelley Simpson, who's the executive vice president, chief commercial officer, and president of Highway Services, said that they're experiencing some tightness, and it continued into the first couple weeks of January. So I mean, I think if that keeps going through January, that's a pretty positive setup, and what I think would be eventually supportive of higher spot rates. Although we're not seeing that right now.
We're not seeing that right now, and I'd be interested for some of the reports or earnings calls that will come out this week. I think PAM Transport might be today. I think they delayed it. They were supposed to do it early this morning, release their earnings probably sometime today if they haven't done it already. They have a broker segment that they report out as well, so it'd be interesting to see what they're saying. And as we go through the next 2 or 3 weeks and get C.H. Robinson, which is the big guy out there, do you know when they report?
I'm covering it. I think it's in
February?
I think it's like next week, yeah.
Oh, next week. So that'll be a really interesting metric to see. So we'll see if this continues and basically if this is a major theme in earnings this season.
One other bright spot from the Integrated Capacity Solutions result, the brokerage division of JB Hunt, was that it does look like they are starting to get some interesting results from their digitization efforts. They were able to grow revenue by 9%. While only growing headcount by 6% year over year. So, I mean, they
also had, I think, 18% more brokerage revenue flow through 360 year over year. So, and they cited the marketing cost as one of the reasons for why margins got compressed. But if you're going to grow the 360 platform, you're going to have to spend money. But hopefully, they do expect those marketing costs to slow down into 2020. So you could see a margin rebound.
Yeah, and I think kind of what they do is like when a carrier calls a broker up to bid on a load or try to get a load, the broker will basically say like, hey, I'll help you out on this rate if you book it through 360. And then the bet is like once they adopt that and see how easy it is, they continue using the digital platform, and it becomes simpler and more efficient.
Very good. And now we also have CSX.
Yeah.
That came out, and you're the expert on the rails around here. So
Not the expert on the rails.
Relative.
relative. It's all relative.
I think with CSX, it's really they guided for flat to 2% growth in revenue for 2020, a little bit higher operating ratio in 2020 than 2019. So this is really probably one of the later stage PSR stories among the Class 1 rails right now. The other thing I'll say is that they are still sort of saying that they're not interested in bringing intermodal rates down to try to grow those volumes aggressively. They're not really interested in competing with trucking. And I think some analysts were kind of giving them a hard time, saying that look, how much more is intermodal going to grow? Has intermodal growth peaked? Is it slowing down? As the transportation network in North America kind of shifts to shorter transit times, shorter lengths of haul, better service, 24/7 visibility. How do you sell intermodal if you're not going to move on price? And I don't really think that management had a great answer for that. And we'll just see at what point the market kind of forces them to try to grow volumes again.
Very good. Very interesting. Now we'll switch over to the DHL Supply Chain Pricing Power Index. We talked a little bit about capacity earlier from the J.B. Hunt earnings call, and we left it the same at 40. Andrew, you want to explain how we determine that for our new listeners?
Sure. So, we've got a range from 0 to 100, 100 being full power to the shippers, meaning they control all of the pricing power in negotiations with the carriers, and 100 being all the power to the carriers. We started this about 4 months ago, and it was, 40, 45, fell all the way down to 15, which would be most of the power to the shippers there before Christmas. And then a strong seasonal run through Christmas has kept us up at 40 currently. And the reason that we didn't change it this week was because we are seeing capacity tighten. 7.5 on our outbound tender rejection index is higher than 9 or 10 of the months.
Most of the year, yeah.
Yeah, so good. And volumes are year over year about the same. They've been relatively flat since the beginning of the year. Volumes are in as good a shape as they were last year, and rejections are higher. So we think that gives carriers a little bit more pricing power than they would have had this time last year.
And you can see the full gauge and our article on FreightWaves.com on the main page. Is right down on the right-hand side, just below the top stories.
And there are some, people who are kind of bearish on trucking for 2020. But if you look at those two numbers that Andrew just cited, the fact that volumes are flat, I think they're up literally 30 basis points, 0.3% above 2019, so flat. Yet tender rejections are meaningfully higher. You understand that it's not that things are tighter because of a surge in volume. It has to be on the capacity side. And so we're finally getting that process where enough carriers have exited the market, where people aren't buying new trucks, things like that. We saw the drop off in used truck prices starting in October. That's just a simple math equation. If volumes are flat and its capacity is tighter, it must be because there's fewer trucks.
Yeah, and you wrote about the used truck prices this week in one of your Passport research reports, right?
Yep.
In our last survey that we did of carriers, we asked them, what are their expectations for how many trucks they're going to add, and this has been a reoccurring theme that they're always the biggest problem is overcapacity, but we're adding 25% more trucks. That finally reversed the last two times we've done it. They said they're going to keep their fleet the same. So I think we're finally having a point at which some of the capacity is churning out of the market.
I think you have those natural supply and demand fundamentals, and I think there's some regulations that have hit in January that is kind of bullish on capacity leaving the market, or at least qualified drivers, reducing that pool with both the Drug Clearinghouse and the FMCSA is now going to double from 25% random testing to 50% random testing, which I think will pull enough capacity or qualified drivers out of the market to at least have have a positive impact on tightening capacity rates. So I think it's going to be a little bit. It's going to be a much different market in 2020 as we progress through these the first quarter, which is always pretty horrid.
And it's the spot rates are and rejections are quite sensitive to change to relative imbalances in capacity and demand. It's not like, okay, capacity has to come down by 10% for rates to go up by 10%. It's very
exponential.
Think about it as like the gas market,
asymmetric.
We
Exactly.
have a possibility that 5% of the oil gets cut off for 2 weeks with the bombings in Iran, and all of a sudden gas prices jump 30%.
Double. I mean, it'd be a huge 5%, right? So if you're looking at like 1 or 2% adjustment in capacity, could be a 30 or 40% climb in rates.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, make a big
or
difference.
maybe that's
But
a little
larger,
bit too. But maybe 20%,
growth.
right?
Right.
And 20% coming off $1.50 is not really all that much. I mean, I guess it is.
Well, and that kind of leads us in actually a little bit to the segment about our newest data set in sonars.
It does,
which,
yes.
There are paper thin rates in this, razor thin in this industry, but we have a new sonar data set that our data teams put together, and it's the overnight wholesale fuel price change. And more or less what this does is, we'll talk a little bit about the difference between rack and retail prices, but these large carriers, they buy gas at rack prices. So they don't really care what the retail price is at the pump because they're buying it from a wholesale dealership. And now we have created a model that can predict with 90% accuracy what the overnight change in that price could be. So, Kevin, you want to tell why that's important, or one of y'all want to add to why that's important?
Yeah.
I'll let JP run with this one.
Okay, so basically, so our data scientists looked at correlations between how WTI, West Texas Intermediate crude oil futures contracts trade, and then how wholesale diesel markets react to that on an overnight basis. And wholesale diesel is sold at what's called the rack, which is where essentially the tanker trucks fill up to then go to gas stations and fuel stations to fill those up. And of course, like Andrew said, large carriers tend to buy diesel fuel sort of on the rack price, discounted above or below that. And basically what this tool does is say, okay, based on what happened in the WTI futures market, this is what's going to happen to wholesale diesel in these markets overnight. And so then if you know that you have a truck and, based on the origin destination pair, it's going through these 6 markets, and you can see that one of these markets is going to have much lower diesel prices tomorrow than all the other ones, you can kind of tell your truck, hey, wait, fill up here early, or wait until this market to fill up, or whatever the case may be, so that you're always taking advantage of those intraday moves, kind of in an intelligent way. And you're saving, pennies on a gallon. But if you do that over and over, if you do that every day times every truck in your fleet, then it adds up to a significant amount of money. And we estimate it's essentially, if you can pull this off, like the average cost savings would be somewhere around 3% of your fuel spend, while still largely leaving the fuel managers in control of sort of which truck stop chain they want to give gallons to. So it's kind of a win-win for all the stakeholders in those purchasing decisions, and we're super excited about it. Just because we think anything that we can do to help improve the operating ratio of the assets moving all these goods is great for the country, great for the economy, and it's great for us too.
Definitely. You looking around? You okay?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm getting things from our producers, so working on that. So
all right. So you guys want to move on to long short? We got our last segment.
Sure.
Cool with that?
Yeah.
All right. So we have 2 today, normal, long, short. The first one is the online mattress retailer Casper. There is a lot of buzz around a possible IPO. They filed for IPO just a couple weeks ago. Had to release their S1 in doing so in their last 3 years of balance sheets and P&Ls. So I'll start with you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Casper. are you long or short Casper moving forward?
I am short because I don't know too much about Casper, but I do know that you're there's nothing quite unique about it. It's more brand driven, I think.
I guess I should have given a little bit more facts about what Casper does.
Yeah.
They market e-commerce direct to consumer mattresses. They started I don't know 5 or 6 years ago. They're worth roughly $1 billion in the private markets, but they have a lot. They share a lot of the characteristics of these underperforming tech IPOs in 2019. They've got massive aspirations of taking over the sleep economy. They have huge losses. And
it kind of reminds me of
profit.
Peloton, right? So Peloton can be a great product. It's a great system. We talked about it last week on our episode on long short. It can be great, but it's not a software company. It doesn't command 10 times revenue as a multiple, which I think probably Casper is trying to do as well. Yeah,
you're close.
I'm close, right? So 8, 10 times multiple for selling mattresses. I just know it's like selling exercise bikes and saying every dollar of sales I get is worth 10 times.
It's not a mattress. It's a platform.
It's a platform.
But
mattress as a service, a mats.
The follow-up question is, are you
sleep
short
as a
on
service? Sleep as a service. SaaS.
They do actually. They sell. They have a place in New York called the Dreamery where you can come and pay $25 to sleep on one of their mattresses for an hour.
Right. So what they do is
that's great. But there's not worth 10 times revenue.
They put electronics in the mattresses. They sell you an app. Then they got data services and analytics on your sleep. They roll it into a subscription.
You can see where they're.
I see where they're going. To the moon. To the moon.
But are you short? Are you short the whole online mattress industry, or are you short Casper in particular?
I'm short any company that's not really a technology company who gets 10 times revenue. Let's just put it that way.
JP, what show you?
So I heard in their S1 that they predict that the sleep economy is growing 6.5% compounded annually, which means that by 2030 I should be sleeping like 15 hours a night. So I'm long that, but I don't know. I don't buy. I'm a kind of a basic guy. I don't really think too hard about my mattresses. I don't buy that many of them.
You spend a third of your life on it. I think you should.
I live in a furnished apartment. I could care less about mattresses or buying mattresses. Right.
I'm tired enough that I can pretty much fall asleep at the end of it.
That's how much I hate buying furniture. I live in a furnished apartment.
Yeah. So I'm short, Casper.
Okay, so I got a couple thoughts. I'm long the online mattress industry, but I'm short Casper, and I'll give a couple reasons. I'm long the online mattress industry because, ironically, it's never been a comfortable process to go buy a mattress. Like, you just have sleazy people trying to sell you mattresses, and it's just never been all that comfortable. But no. It is.
I've done it like once in my life. I barely remember.
I've had to do it. Well, I've did it once on my own. I've done it twice with my parents. They buy mattresses pretty often, but. My problem with Casper is there's no road to profitability. Like, their unit economics are terrible. Purple, another public company doing the very similar thing. They're already turning a profit. They have a much higher price on their mattresses. But my biggest problem is that they have this 100-day free return, so you can sleep on it for up to 100 days, send it back for free. But it's illegal to resell those mattresses as new, so they just have to get rid of them. They lose all market.
Can't you buy used mattresses?
You can, but they have to be sold as used. They can't read. They don't sell used mattresses. That they think that'll tarnish their brand. So they only sell new mattresses, and they just donate those mattresses to charities if they can. Huh. But not often can they, because there's 175 online mattress sellers doing the same thing, so they flooded the local charities with mattresses.
And another drawback to the used mattress is a lot of, like, Goodwill will not take any mattresses, any kind of, well, I won't say any chairs like that, but there's a lot of places that you can't donate used mattresses because of the bed bug epidemics in a lot of places. So they just refuse it outright. So if you go buy a mattress, sleep on it for 100 days, and decide, if I don't think this is mine, then that's a problem.
I don't know. It just seems like a big old waste.
It just seems like similar to Peloton. It seems like an okay like product and like a cool distribution model, but not like the basis for like a whole company that can just grow on this one kind of like relatively small innovation.
Well, I think they're gonna try to, just like Peloton, get into other things. They want to make the pillows, and they want to make the duvets, and they want to sell nightstands and beds.
Analytics. I swear to God, dude. That's
you
what
think,
it's going to be.
You think it's gonna get there?
Yeah, yeah.
Plug,
It's gotta be.
plug
It
your
has to
phone
be
up.
that.
It has an outlet. Whole thing built in.
Yeah.
Maybe so. I don't know.
So yeah, I mean, if you're not a technology company, you're trying to get 10 times revenue. I'm short.
Okay.
I might sleep on that mattress, but I'm sure
After 100 days.
After 100 days, yeah. And then I'll send it back and get another one for another 100 days. Right? That's how you game the system. And I'll have XPO come deliver it to me.
Yeah, you probably will. Honestly. Okay, last long shorts. We've been doing this little sports thing to finish it off. We'll keep it going. The last sports long short is the MLB. Are you long or short the MLB making the 2017 World Series champion Astros forfeit their World Series championship? They have. I don't know if you've been.
Why would they do that?
Well, they've been caught. They were cheating. They were stealing signs the entire year while they were at home.
Yeah.
They had technology. They were using cameras, and then as soon as they would throw a changeup or a curveball, they'd hit a bucket. Or there's now been even accusations that they've got a buzzer on that tells them, that buzzes them. So they just lay off every bad pitch, and then they hit they hit much higher at home than they do away. They won way more games at home than anyone else.
It's weird because I just remember this. The GM that they hired away from the St. Louis Cardinals, that was the GM during the World Series years that they recently fired, had this big thing with, I think he took a lot of data from St. Louis to Houston. I think there's some controversy. AJ Hinch, yeah.
Are they in the same division?
No.
Both in the NL.
They were both in the NL. No. They're not in the same division, but they fired AJ Hinch.
Their GM and their manager.
Their manager, I can't remember. Alex Cora got caught up with it. He was the manager of the Boston Red Sox. He got fired. Carlos Beltran, who was a player on that, got hired back at the New York Mets, which is maybe the greatest team ever.
Yeah, okay. Well, he got canned too.
Anyway, he got canned too before he even managed a game.
So,
wow.
And they haven't, but they haven't started going after the players yet. They think that players are definitely palpable, and that they are going to be that there's going to be some trouble for a lot of these players, but they haven't even started going after them yet.
So long short, do you think that MLB will do anything about either the players or the championship, the World Series back in 2017?
Maybe somebody has already done this, but if some statistician, baseball nerd at Grantland, proves that there's no way they could have won the World Series without cheating, then they should forfeit.
Okay, that's fair. So you're long the idea that they have to forfeit it. How about you, Kev?
You know what? I'm kind of long the idea they have to. It depends on how much cheating there was. You have the Black Sox scandal from over 100 years ago now, and they came down very hard on those guys. I know they were betting on the games. I guess maybe who knows about Houston, but certainly mechanized cheating. I think they probably should. On the player side, I like Jose Altuve. He's one of my favorite players, and he's really in the middle of this thing.
Yeah.
Carlos Beltran, not so much. He was a great player, but I still remember being in the stands at Game 7 against the Cardinals in 2006 with the bases loaded and that curveball going by him, 3-2 pitch. He watched it go by. Ended the Mets season. One of the most silent number 7 train rides from Shea back to Manhattan. It was an eerie experience. So, I think they should probably go after the ringleaders. Long.
I'm just going to go opposite because you guys went long. I think they might give it up, but I don't think they will. I think they'll let him keep it. I think, firing everybody on the staff, and they've already given him 1-year suspensions or 2-year suspensions, so I think they will pay their debts to the game.
I don't think baseball will actually go after him.
Yeah,
there's too many superstars involved for them to actually go after them.
The Astros are one of the best teams in the league. They've got so many young stars. I don't think they're going to take them out of the game for a year.
And the saddest part about it, that 2017 World Series against the Dodgers to Game 7 was one of the best World Series that they've had in 30 years.
Yeah, it was. It's been a good year. It's been a good couple years. A lot of young talent in baseball.
Yeah,
Braves are going to have another good year.
That they are. Okay. That they definitely are.
Taking the pennant this year.
So, and the Mets are going to have another good year.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. But they need to find a manager first and an owner.
That's true.
So owner, manager, they're looking for a lot of different holes. Maybe Jonas Cespedes. I can't even say his name.
Yeah, that was a struggle.
Yeah, I know that was a struggle. But anyway, maybe he'll be back. If he comes back, they might go after the Braves. But who knows? But we're out of time now.
Yep. JP, thanks for hanging out with us, man.
JP.
Thanks for having me, guys.
As always.
Yeah. And go to FreightWaves.com/passport to find out about all the package deals on Passport Research that we all contribute to, and those tickets to our amazing live events in Atlanta, and I think we're going to do in Fort Worth on the fall
In November.
2020 in November. But we'll see. So that wraps it up. Have a great week, and you can always find us at FreightWaves.com. Great quarter, guys. And I forgot to do the outro music, so I'll do that right now.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andrew.